My manager rings his manager, and his manager rings his...
Which means our manager talks to himself a lot.
We just, as I said before, we had arranged to sort of, we worked out that a period, maybe 1991 would be the next period when we all had finished what we were doing, and that would be a good time to do a band album. We all agreed on that and thought that would be a good idea, and we came in, and the first day we were here, we just made sure the equipment was working in the studio over there. And then the next day we came in and we just started writing, and none of us brought in any songs. None of us brought in any little pieces of music that didn't have homes. We just came in with nothing, apart from, you know, a sort of a sheet of paper, if you like, with nothing on it, and sort of we began to fill it up with ideas. And we recorded on cassette or DAT everything we played, and we just started accumulating and cataloguing ideas and improvising and from scratch, you know, and that's what makes it so interesting, because it's something that we can't do on our own. I mean, individually, the way we write, I guess, is through improvisation. We sit at home individually and play our instruments and write songs. But to get three people, with the chemistry of three people to work like that, is something you don't find in, I don't think, any other band today. There's usually one writer in a group or two writers, or they don't write at all and they get outside songs. But you know, we're a group that exists really self-contained. You know, we write the songs and we play them, and really we're all responsible for each song on this album.
Well, the years they pass so slowly. I thought about him every day. What would I do if we passed on the street? Would I keep running away?
5 years from one album and another one. I know if the Genesis nor are a band follow the market and do an album after the tour, but 5 hours, you don't think it's too be a little bit too much more?
But I don't think we didn't intend it to be that way. We finished Invisible Touch and we went on tour with it for 10 months, and at the end of that I think we all felt we wanted a bit of a break and do some other things. And we set a tentative date to come back together again. And that was 1991. So between 1987, July of 1987, when we finished the tour, to February of 1991, that's when we were sort of doing other things, you know. I think we all recharged the batteries by doing outside projects and then came back to the band and felt good for it.
I mean, you have had 5 albums, I think, 2, 3, 4, yeah, probably about 5 albums from us in the time since Invisible Touch, you know, of varying degrees of, you know, whatever. But so there's been no lack of music really. I think it's, I think it just, if you keep the albums and just do them when you kind of really feel like doing them, then it's kind of can have more enthusiasm.
The title of the album is We Can't Dance. What means? You don't like to dance?
I certainly don't like to dance, actually. You picked the right man here. I don't know, it's not just that really. I think the We Can't Dance title I mean, obviously it relates to the song "I Can't Dance" on the album, but that's got a specific meaning in the song which doesn't relate really to what the phrase means out of context. We don't feel ourselves to be very much a part of what perhaps is the main current sort of pop music scene, which is a lot of dance music, which is something that I've never really been into that, at all, and I don't think we feel part of that. We feel we're separate from that, and this sort of identifies that separateness, if you like. And it's not necessarily that we feel there's anything wrong with that, it just doesn't appeal to us. So that's one meaning. And the other meaning, really, we can always justify meanings after we've thought of a title, which we're doing in this case. The song "No Son of Mine" and everything, which deals with this general misunderstanding, or perhaps not just a misunderstanding, but certainly a distance between generations. The album cover has a picture of a man and a boy on it, and the idea that there's a problem with the two getting on, if you like, the generation gap, and the relationship problems that exist between sort of fathers and sons and all that. "We Can't Dance" is a sort of, a way of saying that, a simple way, because
we don't communicate.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Because it is.
There must be some misunderstanding. There must be some kind of mistake. I waited in the rain for hours. You were late. Now it's not like me to say the right thing. You could have called to let me know. I checked your number twice, don't understand it. So I went home. Well, I've been waiting for this weekend. I thought that maybe we could see a show. Never dreamed I had this feeling. All I've seen you is believing. That's why I don't know why you didn't show tonight.
3 is the perfect number. You are now 3 musicians to work together. I remember from when you were start, the band was a little bit more, have a lot more members. Now we are after 22 years, maybe more, roughly. You are in 3, you work together, you are in straight connection. Also, if I think you do the solo project, what is the relation? It's changed from the beginning, from the personal relation, also the professional relation, when the music and writing songs.
Well, the first part, really, the relationship, I mean, it's a lot of it's very similar. I mean, we've been the same 3 since the beginning. We've changed as people, obviously. We've kind of matured, and we probably get on better. There's no friction like there used to be in the group. I think we've improved musically, but the songwriting process has really stayed the same kind of way. It's moved around a little bit, but it's still the same process of put a combination of people in the room, and you get a certain kind of sound that is Genesis.
Misunderstanding. There must be misunderstanding.
The Genesis is in a band that have a very strong identity just from the beginning. It's very strong. Everybody, when it's put on the records immediately after 5 seconds, these are the Genesis. You consider this identity is a sort of pressure, give to you maybe the possibility to developing the Genesis project in another way, or you consider this is an advantage for to do a project like Genesis?
I think the fact that we have a certain sound which you can identify is something we don't fight. Although I don't think we feel we have to stay within that area. I mean, I think we try as much as we can to take some songs and some of our music to some extreme. Like on the new album, song like I Can't Dance is that category. It's a kind of song that sounds very different to Genesis. And if you put that on and Phil wasn't singing, you wouldn't know it was us straight away. I think we try and escape from that mold, but at the same time, I don't think it's a bad thing either.
Taking it all straight or take a one bite. Living with you is just to put me through it all of the time. I could leave, but I won't go. Well, it'd be easier, I know. I can't feel a thing from my head down to my toes. Why does it always seem to be me looking at you, you looking at me? It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all. Truth says I love you more than I wanted to. There's no point in trying to pretend. There's been no one who makes me feel like you do. Say we'll be together to the end. Well, I've been waiting here so long, but thinking nothing could go wrong. But now I know she has the built-in ability to take everything she sees, and now it seems I'm falling for her. She seems to have invisible touch, and she reaches in and grabs right hold of your heart. She seems to have invisible touch, and it takes control and slowly tears you apart.
And the argument about the lyrics of the songs is a sort you go to discuss when you eat, or after the studio you go to eat, what is about the problem. I would like to do a song about these arguments or these art, or everything's kind of like the music. You would talk with...
Well, the lyrics aren't quite done in quite the same way, because the music is just a sort of more organic thing. The lyrics, we kind of decide who's going to do what song. On this album, Phil did about half the lyrics, a bit more than normal. And a lot of the ones he was doing, he normally had a vocal idea, a lyrical idea, which came when he was singing it. Maybe a hook line or a phrase or some words that made him know what subject matter was going to happen. And we tend to then go away, and myself and Tony go away and write the lyrics, and then bring them back and sort of present them to the other people, and get a bit of feedback at that stage.
We tend to let people get on with it a bit, really, with terms of lyrics. I mean, within obviously you've got to feel happy with whatever the result is. But I don't think we feel, I do feel you have quite a lot of freedom with the lyric. If you've got an idea you want to write something about, you do it. And a couple we have in the past, once or twice, had ideas that we've not been able to take that another person's produced. And obviously we're quite prepared to make minor changes to the lyrics, particularly obviously Phil's singing them, so if it's something he finds difficult to get his tongue around, then, we change it.
She has the built-in ability to take everything she sees, and now it seems I'm falling for her. She seems to have an invisible touch, she reaches in and grabs right hold of your heart. She seems to have an invisible touch, it takes control and slowly tears you apart.
There's something that Jesus Who Knows Me and Tell Me Why are the two songs, for example, where, for various reasons, the topic of religion, even though we're not having a go at religion, we're talking about TV evangelists in that song, especially in America, with that particular song, Jesus Who Knows Me. But when I said, I remember the instance when I was singing Jesus Who Knows Me when we were writing the song, and I remember saying it's going to be about TV evangelists. I can see it now. I think maybe there was a bit of worry about maybe you don't want to the lyrics are representative of the whole group, even though they're written by one person. And so you want to make sure that the topics like that are dealt with in a way that everybody agrees with, you know. And so when I wrote those lyrics, I kind of felt I didn't want to do something necessarily that the guys wouldn't feel, you know, and would tell me why, because it's a subject matter that's almost like a protest song in a way, and it's a sort of an attitude towards things. Everybody has to agree with that attitude, otherwise it's one person's opinion. And I think you try and bear that in mind when you're writing lyrics, so that we all agree on the subject, even though one person has written it.
Remember everything you said. There's so much you promised. How could I ever forget? Listen, you know I love you, but I just can't take this. You know I love you, but I'm playing for keeps. Although I need you, I'm not gonna need this. You know I want to, but I'm in too deep. So listen to me. Oh, you must believe me. I can feel your eyes go through me, but I don't know why.
You consider the music in one song a vehicle to send the messages now, today, when the mass media are more strong in this era. You consider music a vehicle to tell something to the people. When I talk about music, not only for enjoy, something happens, something in the back.
I think it is. You know, it can be used as. I don't think it can be used to change anything, but I think it can be used to prompt people to ask questions. I think it can be used to embarrass people into making moves to do something. You know, I think that has been successful in some instances. You can draw attention to things that people don't otherwise think about. People generally tend to go on automatic pilot about certain subjects and certain issues, and then when they hear a song, maybe when they hear a song and it reaches them, they think, wow, yeah, that's true. I hadn't have thought of that, or yes, I agree with that, and suddenly someone asks a question, and before you know it, it's snowballed, and maybe something can happen out of it. But I don't think any of us are sort of pompous enough to believe that we can change anything, but you do ask questions, and maybe from that you get some answers, you know.
Just can't breathe. So say you'll help me, mama, 'cause it's getting so hard. Oh, now I can keep you, mama, but I know you're always there. You listen, you teach me, mama, and I know inside you care.
What's happened with the countries don't understand very well the lyrics, like Italy, Spain. And you have a huge success in this country.
I think it's always been one of the nicest things I've felt, is that they just enjoy the music, which I think
They get a feeling, you know.
Yeah.
A feeling from the. I mean, the lyrics should always complement the music anyway. I mean, we all write lyrics that work with the music. We don't have a lyrical idea and then write music to fit it. So the fact that in the early days, Italy especially, and Belgium was the other country that took to us quite quickly, quite early, was the fact that they would applaud musical changes, you know, and they would get involved in the music because the romance of the chords or the feeling or the mood of the music was so strong. So in a way it's quite flattering, I think, the sort of fact that countries that don't understand the lyrics get moved by the music without knowing what's being sung.
I think a lot of people who don't necessarily understand the lyrics do take trouble to try and translate them and understand them too, actually. I remember certainly remember that in the early days. There's a lot of people, and it's funny where you end up taking it more seriously, because if you've looked at it that closely that you bothered to try and translate it, you kind of know every word, don't you? Whereas often, I mean, there's many bits of music that I've liked over the years that I can't even remember half the lyrics of, you know, because I don't listen to it necessarily in that kind of way. It's a sort of whole effect that comes at you. Because I do think a lot of, I mean, certainly I know many Italians in the early days used to translate the lyrics and come back with you know, ideas of what they thought things were about. They could tell us what the songs were about, because we didn't know.
But I can hear the marching feet. They're moving into the street. Now did you read the news today? They say the danger's gone our way. But I can see the fire still light. They're burning into the night. There's too many men, too many people, making too many problems. And not much left to go round. Can't you see this is the land of confusion? This is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given. Use them, let's start trying to make it a place worth living in.
You see change the audience in front of you, the age of the people. After mixing, you know, at the beginning everybody was young. After, when you come in the year pass, there's a mixing. Now you have the possibility to play for the kids have 12, 15 years old and like the Genesis, and people like me, 30 or 40 years old. 40 years old.
You're 30 or 40.
Unfortunately.
Fair enough.
Unfortunately. And what is the feeling to have a different kind of audience? Maybe the father.
I think it's nice. I mean, I think it's almost a compliment that you can reach people who've started off with you and grown older, you know, with you, and then kids who were not born when you were making your third or fourth album, yet they still like you. I always found it interesting in this day and age when you imagine that the kind of the 15, 16-year-old kids only like what is kind of the top 10 or the kind of contemporary things for their age, yet they like Genesis very much.
But then as soon as you have a hit single, then they call you a pop group, you see. So
You can't win.
you can't win. No, I mean, in easy terms, I suppose pop is something that's more trivial than rock. But you know, we have moments of pop. We have had moments of pop anyway, and you know, but then just because you have a 3-minute song, people think that's a pop song. You know, you can say something quite important in 3 minutes, but it's not necessarily trivial. So it's a whole can of worms, really. It's impossible. I mean, it's just music, really. We play lots of different types of music inside Genesis. I mean, there's lots of different styles. There's lots of different tastes between the three of us, and areas that we like to explore. And so that will come out in the music. So it's impossible to define it under one heading.
right here by my side. If ever I need you, oh my love, in your arms I feel so safe and so secure. Every day is such a perfect day to spend along with you. I will follow you. Will you follow me? All the days and nights that we know will be. I will stay with you. Will you stay with me? Just one single tear in each passing year. With the dawn, oh, I see so very clearly now. All my fears are drifting by me so slowly now, fading away. I can say
problemi. Non a caso il brano sul quale è stato girato un video è No Son of Mine, il racconto di un bambino che se ne va di casa per fuggire alle violenze del padre.
Abbiamo girato il video l'altro giorno e uno dei componenti della troupe ha detto che il testo raccontava alla perfezione ciò che era accaduto a lui. È una canzone che comunica qualcosa a chi la ascolta. Ho avuto anch'io esperienze del genere e so che molti non ne parlano perché se ne vergognano.
Since I Lost You è dedicata a Connor, il figlio di Eric Clapton, morto tragicamente cadendo da un grattacielo.
Sono arrivato qui in studio con l'immagine di quel bimbo in mente e non riuscivo a pensare ad altro. Tony e Mike mi hanno suonato ciò che avevano scritto il giorno prima. Ho cominciato a cantare e così spontaneamente sono venute fuori quelle parole, quasi uguali a quelle definitive. L'amicizia con Eric è molto profonda. A volte non riusciamo a vederci per un paio di mesi, il lavoro e le vacanze ci tengono lontani, ma ci scriviamo oppure ci mandiamo dei fax. Nell'ambiente ho anche qualche altro amico, il migliore è forse David Crosby, che ho conosciuto molto bene.
It's just a way of staying in contact. I mean, I've got a few friends. David Crosby is another person who I've got very close to since my album.
La tournée dei Genesis
The UK today after a complicated 3-month tour dogged by technical problems and postponed dates. But as Nick St George reports, Genesis are still on top form.
The stage and all its trimmings, seen here in Dallas, proved too complicated to rig overnight. 3 UK dates in 3 days were just too much to handle.
Well, I've been waiting for so long, but thinking nothing could go wrong.
But Britain will still see the band in all its technological glory. Despite still mounting elaborate stage shows, Genesis are adamant their presentation and their music are pared down from the early days. The days when Peter Gabriel and theatricality took centre stage.
I've fallen for her. She's in the hat, got invisible touch. She reaches in and grabs right hold of your heart.
The things I said to myself was, one, that I wanted people to hear the words again, and I wanted people to hear the melodies again. I just felt that if I'm going to do this, then I want to take it back a few stages to where the music's been heard again. And I just stood there and sang. And I said, if that's okay, that's what I'm going to do. Gradually, you know, you bring little bits and pieces in. I mean, although I'm not exactly someone you can watch for 2 or 3 hours and not take your eyes off. You know, I'm not that kind of performer.
Now this is the world we live in. These are the hands we give.
And the biggest change, I think, really has been the lyrical change. Going way back to early Genesis, we started with much more sort of, on the whole, fancy lyrics, very indirect. And now, obviously, with Phil's been writing lyrics in '78, when we sort of first started doing that, and we, Tony and I, have changed a lot. We're much more direct now, I think, and that's possibly the biggest change, I think, on the surface, when people would see it that way.
I think the other big change that's occurred, obviously, is the way we dress up the songs. In the early days,
Dress, that's what I was coming to.
I think people often got very sidetracked by the embellishments. I mean, we always wrote songs, you know, and then of course we'd rehearse them for sort of six weeks or something, and of course by the time the end of 6 weeks, you'd sort of, all your parts had got very fancy. And I think what we've learned nowadays is a matter of confidence as much as anything, is that you don't need to disguise the song to such an extent. The song sounds great, right, sounds good with just block chords and a steady drum beat.
She's in the hat, that invisible touch, yeah, 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 yeah.
Despite a massive worldwide following, Genesis have only few friends in the media. Fashionable, they're not.
Genesis in the earlier days used to be more like Panto. Since then, they've gone increasingly for nice pastel covers. You imagine their houses have probably got the same carpets as building societies, and it's all very reassuring. They're always there. They're like the High Street Bank or your local lending library. I think people like to know that there's something there like that.
If you want music with sharp edges, you're not going to get it with Genesis. It is, you know, they have smoothed off all the corners. But having said that, you know, there's a lot of power in their lyrics nowadays, and you know, I personally would refute the bland image.
Ah, but I can hear my children's cry. I can see the tears in their eyes. Memories of those I've left behind, still ringing in my ears.
There is a great advantage to never being fashionable, because it means you never die with the fashion. You know, I mean, you see it. I mean, we've been around a long time, as people may or may not know, and we've seen obviously eras come and go. You know, we have. It's true. It is true. So it's a great advantage, I think. And having not been fashionable means we've always kind of run a sort of parallel course. You know, and people who've liked us have been able to listen to us and not really be too swayed by what the critics think.
Showing no fear of what might lie ahead. They'll never see the likes of us.
Well, Genesis play Roundhay Park in Leeds tonight and Nebworth Park near Stevenage on Sunday. And a few tickets apparently might be available if you're very lucky. That's it from me now. Sport. Easy to be rude about Genesis, but we were all having a bit of a sing-song there, weren't we?
We were, weren't we?
We have to own up to it.
You were leading the chorus, weren't you?
You'll be leading Nebworth, though,
exactly.
here on Sunday.
Thanks a lot. Sport now.